We are in Salt Lake City for Permissionless, and today I'm with Robinson, founder of Wormhole. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Is this your first time in Salt Lake City?
Actually, yeah. As someone who was born in the US, you'd think I would probably have been here before, but I've never have.
Maybe,
The
yeah.
airport, the airport, I've been there before.
You have
Yeah,
a layover.
yeah.
Yeah, where are you originally from?
I'm originally from South Florida, so Fort Lauderdale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
And you still live there?
No, I live in Lisbon.
Why did you decide to go to Lisbon?
Running the foundation, it was advantageous just to make sure we're outside the US. That was one. Second is when I'm not, working and building Wormhole, I enjoy the ocean, surfing, things like that.
Yeah.
So Lisbon has a city and, those activities. There's a little bit of a crypto community there. It's beautiful weather, and it's close to New York. So I go to New York quite a bit.
Yeah, you can fly directly from there.
Yeah, fly directly, and it's actually not that long of a flight. I think it depends on the winds, 6 to 7 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did you know from the beginning that you were interested in crypto, or someone had to convince you? How did it start?
Oh yeah, I had like your standard kind of 2017 mining red pill story, but at the time I was at a company called DoorDash, and I I was actually living with someone who was mining Ethereum because back then Ethereum was proof of work, it was not proof of stake.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are you doing driving up our utility costs? Like that classic, like, oh, you're running a rig and it drives up your utility, et cetera. But I learned more about what he was doing, and then probably like a couple weeks later, I was doing the same thing. And that was kind of like my red pill moment or blue pill. And then just started learning more about Ethereum, other blockchains, et cetera. But yeah, it was back in 2017.
Yeah, class of 2017 is always
Class of 2017.
the Ethereum
It was a strong
people.
class.
It
Class.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, like strong quality of developers.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Did you like at that time, were you interested in Bitcoin as well?
I think I was more interested, like, yes, I was interested in the core principles of Bitcoin, decentralization, sovereign money, all of those things. But I think the interest for me was when blockchain started to have virtual machines, started to be these environments where you could build applications, because then the vision became like, hey, we can effectively build everything we do today on like our phones and things like that, but have it run on this like these decentralized rails, these blockchains, these immutable ledgers. That to me was more interested. So it was more about the concept of what can you build on top of this. And then I started getting really interested, then, kind of more of the store of value digital gold type thing.
Mm-hmm. So you go from DoorDash to mining Ethereum. What happens next?
Yeah, so actually I was personally doing that while I stayed at DoorDash, and DoorDash did quite well in the US and now in Canada and a bunch of other countries. But for me, it was like always when I was going to make my move more professionally in the space. I was kind of like, where are the picks and shovels, if you will, kind of like the infrastructure. I know today we get kind of tired about like infrastructure. Everyone's like, but back then, it was like we need a lot of blockchains. But the one thing that, was always really interesting to me is that if we have all these blockchains, and might I remind you that multi-chain was not the general consensus back in like 2020 time.
No.
Right? It was a hot take. But if you need multiple blockchains, how do you connect them? Like what's the way in which they communicate? And Polkadot at the time actually was really leading on that front.
Yeah.
Polkadot, has great tech, nothing but good things to say about them. But I was like, okay, I think this is the ecosystem I want to start in. So I ended up joining early on a team called Akala there, help them with a few things, just get my feet wet, kind of making that transition from Web 2 to Web 3.
Yeah.
And then, and then after that, joined Jump, and Wormhole happened.
Wormhole happened.
Yeah.
How did it happen?
Yeah, so Wormhole, I think most people are familiar with this, but it doesn't have your typical like protocol birth story. Wormhole was started by actually the original Certus 1 core technology was started by 3 developers. Crypto came along and effectively in-housed what they were doing. Like you could say they almost like acquired it, if you will, that like core technology at the time. And that core technology was really connecting Solana and Ethereum. How do you send an asset from this chain to this chain? There was no messaging, no anything else. And then at Jump at the time, there's a group of us that were solely focused on building out Wormhole. So it was, how do you get this kind of core idea to all these chains and have developers be able to build on top of it, et cetera. And then eventually, I mean, I'm fast forwarding and moving, through some of the story here, but we had to spin things out. And the way I think about this, you could probably make the same argument for blockchains, but Wormhole is what is like making everything happen in the background when it comes to assets going cross chain. Oracles are built on Wormhole. It's this very behind the scenes technology similar to a blockchain. And so it's almost like this infrastructure. It's like if you and I go about our day-to-day lives, you don't think about the plumbing in this building, you don't think about the highways, those types of things. So we really needed something so systemically important to all of crypto to be decentralized and not be kind of backed by one party. So in typical like protocol fashion, we spun out to the Wormhole Foundation, we spun out of Wormhole Labs, and then we actually brought on a couple other contributors as well, security team, another labs entity. And our goal is to effectively continue to grow the contributor base, not just be one foundation, one labs, but like have multiple people, almost like Ethereum. If I ask you who builds Ethereum, maybe you say consensus, but there's devs all around the world that are contributing to Ethereum.
When you start working on this, like one is obviously like understanding like the current market, like what's already out and how they might even like copy what you are set to do. How did you navigate that in the beginning?
Like having conviction behind this idea, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're, I would say a few things, and these are more of like things I try to keep in mind. Like if you always are following, or if you are obsessed with what others are doing or competitors are doing, you'll never end up leading because you never take a risk to like, hey, I think this is a better way to do it, or it's just like a general principle I try to follow. And even within the company today, really it's very easy in this industry to be competitor obsessed, like see someone post on Twitter and you're like, oh my gosh, they're doing X, Y, and Z, we got to do X, Y, and Z. But I think that by having conviction in an idea, in a direction, of course there's risk involved, it might not work out, and so there's a bit of luck, I guess you could say. By having that, you can end up leading. But if you're always following different ideas, you will never kind of start something, I guess, novel, new, and big. And I think the same goes with companies that are already been around, or protocols, 3-4 years. If they're just chasing what all of the other, let's say the blockchain L2s are chasing what other L2s are doing, or chasing what other interoperability protocols and so on, you'll never lead. You'll never have that moment where you put out an idea and a product that ultimately catches on and gets product market fit.
So as you begin to work on this, how do you explain to other people that this is better than what's already out?
Yeah. I think first it's helpful to like understand what Wormhole is. So I'll take a quick step back and then I'll get into why it's better. Most people will say, and I'll keep this short, Wormhole's a bridge. Wormhole is not a bridge. Wormhole powers bridges, powers multi-chain applications. And so what I mean by that, and I'll use an analogy, is that the way to think about Wormhole, and this is a rough analogy, but if you've ever wired money, you've ever sent money between two banks, most of the time, sometimes they're the same bank, but a lot of times, especially international, it's different.
Yeah.
Those banks have different databases, different systems, different processes that they have to follow, and really they don't talk to each other. Like they don't have a way to communicate. So Swift is almost like this company that I view them as like a translation layer. It enables you to send money effectively between these different chains. Banks communicate with these banks. We do very much so the same thing. So we help blockchains communicate with one another. Solana to Ethereum, Ethereum to Arbitrum, and so on. But once you're able to do that like core thing, you can build all types of stuff on top of it. And in 2021, 2020, like DeFi summer, we saw people build bridges, which were very much so like the main product market fit. Like, how do I send my asset from here to there? I'd argue assets are still like 90% of product market fit today. But back then we saw people sending punks, cross-chain, sending Bored Apes cross-chain. So, but what I'm trying to say is that I think there's a difference between a token bridge, which is definitely, there's many built on Wormhole, and then what Wormhole is, which is an interoperability platform. And then you can also build things like Pyth. Pyth, the Oracle, if you're familiar, uses Wormhole messages to send price feeds across the chain. So all that being said, I think it's helpful. It's like this systemic web, if you will. And security is super, super important. So I think security is really where Wormhole shines. Most teams in this industry actually will do this, which I don't think this is a bad practice, but here's your normal, I shipped new code, what do you do next? You get an external audit, right? You go and pay an auditor, there's many auditors, you'll pay like, I don't know, however much money to get it audited, and then you're like, good, my code is great, I'm gonna put it out there in the wild, open source it, whatever. for us, we actually, number one, we internalized our security team. So we have a core contributor. We have a number of people that like are internal to the team on security.
Okay.
So we always do an internal audit. We still do external audits. We still think they're great. But I think one of the best things is we have what I call defense in depth security. So I'll explain this. Won't get too technical, but the way I think about defense in depth, have you ever seen Harry Potter?
Yeah.
Okay. So Voldemort, the villain, the way in which you kill him or the antagonist is he has these things called Horcruxes. They're like pieces of his soul. I won't get too into the lore there, but in order to kill him, you have to effectively kill those Horcruxes to ultimately get to him. And the way to think about defense in depth security is you have to kind of get through a number of different layers to ultimately get at a vulnerability in Wormhole. So we've built out all of these different things to make it. Someone actually gave me a good analogy the other day. It was like if a ship's sinking or has a hole in it, there's actually chambers so the whole thing doesn't sink in a lot of like cargo ships. So you would like close the one part off. But anyway, I think I would sum it up. There's a lot of things I could say. I think we do a great job. This is such a BD type thing because it's a network effects business, right? You need more people using Wormhole. That's how you grow, just like a blockchain mental model. So I think we have a really good technical team, security team, et cetera. But I think security is one of the most important things when it comes to interoperability, and I think Wormhole does the best in the industry.
I think like every other project, like there's always a moment that sort of highlights a vulnerability.
Yeah.
And I'm sure like you've been through that.
Yeah.
How was that experience and how did you like prepare everyone in the team to quickly respond to it and adapt?
Yeah, I think when we think about Wormhole, I used to get this question, we used to get this question a lot, or still do sometimes, but now we view it as almost like a battle-tested badge, right? We were in a fortunate position where one of our larger investors was able to effectively like make everyone whole very soon after the incident happened, which is pretty much unheard of at that size. So that was one thing, prioritizing users. The other thing was I would say you kind of know what a team is like or know when you see them with that adversity. So now Wormhole today is like a team that is going to be here for a while, right? We're going to push this thing. Yeah, you're not going to pack it up and be like, shoot, this happened and I'm sorry and kind of move on. So I think that we look back on that now, and it also, last thing I'll say is it also really pushed us to build out the security org we have today. So internal security leaders from Web2, the robust defense in depth. So it's like this piece of our history that really helped harden Wormhole as a protocol. And I think now, especially given February, I think will be 3 years since the incident, now we feel like very good about it and are almost, again, like I said, use it as a badge of honor to say like, we'll be here for a while. We're prioritizing security. We know what it's like and we'll put users first.
It definitely feels like very solid this year. I feel like a lot of people feel about it like that. 3 co-founders, right?
Yeah, so Wormhole today, I would say, so there's 2 kind of core contributing entities. There's the Wormhole Foundation, Wormhole Labs. Wormhole Labs has 3 co-founders. Wormhole Foundation is 2. And so I'm myself and Dan are on the Wormhole Foundation.
Did you ever have any disagreements?
I think I'm pretty lucky in this sense that we are, there's a really good mesh. And I know that's like a boring answer.
No.
But and you're actually making me think about how I should be more grateful that, we work so well together. But, there's stressful moments, I would say, heated moments. I wouldn't say it's directed at one another. It's more of, fire drills and all these things that happen. You need to like address them, but we all kind of fill each other's gaps. And no, I would say, again, not to be boring, but I think like there's a really good mesh, and I'll probably walk away from this being more like we're lucky to have that.
Yeah, for sure. It's very common.
But it's also common for fallouts to happen too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So common. As you're building this, is there like something that in hindsight like you kind of wish like you had seen sooner?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, and this maybe gets a little too in the weeds, so I won't go too deep into it, but more around like strategy of where interoperability as a category is going. So I would say there's 2 buckets. First bucket is asset interoperability, and then there's what I would say message interoperability. Okay. Message interoperability is like if I'm a protocol, I'm going to use messaging to help me expand, let's say. So think about the Pith example I used. So Pith is effectively, they have a PithNet, all these price feeds are on PithNet, when they use Wormhole to take them everywhere. Then there's asset interoperability, which is probably what you've used a Wormhole bridge for, or Powered Bridge, or a lot of like institutions now use Wormhole to take assets cross chain. What I would say is, I think for a while, and we still are, but we really, really prioritize what I would call the messaging side of things. I think it's extremely important. We're leading on a lot of those categories in terms of like the ability, the things you're able to do with messaging with Wormhole. But I think today we have to be honest with ourselves that as much as we want to see all these cool use cases come to life on the blockchain, 90%, 95% is asset related. And that is okay. That is okay. There's a huge industry. It's one of the biggest ones to be disrupted by tech, right? And or one of the biggest opportunities left to be disrupted. And I'm of the belief that it's, if I don't think this is going to happen, but if all we get out of this is, building a new financial system, that's huge. Exactly. Yeah. So I think for us, I guess my short answer would be, we prioritize messaging still today. We prioritize it a lot, but we've kind of pivoted a little bit and really are focusing on this asset component. And I think that's going to be really important given, I think, where the industry is going.
Yeah, absolutely. And where do you think it's going?
I think just what I said. I'm not going to be one of those people who's like, yeah, Web3 game. I'm not going to pump up Web3 games, but I'm also not going to put them down. Like, okay. I think they'll find their place over time. I also oftentimes use this kind of like thought exercise around like Web3 gaming and institutions and AI. I think a lot of people get kind of annoyed with like the hype of them, and they die, and the hype, and they die. We are kind of wired to have this like short-term AI is popular now. Let me go outside and see all the benefits ASAP, right? Like it's almost like you want there to be all, and I think ChatGPT obviously did do a good job of this. But another example, just to like bring it home, is institutions, right? Since 2017 we've been saying the institutions are coming.
Yeah.
But the thing is these things don't happen overnight, and AI doesn't take jobs overnight. You actually look back, someone does some like analysis, they look back and they go, over the past decade, AI has taken away, 4 million jobs from retail workers in the US, right? It's these like progressive things over time. But now I think we are at a point where, even though we were saying the institutions are coming in 2017, the institutions are in fact here. We work with a lot of them. They're very focused on the financialization side of blockchain. So just to full circle, bring my answer back, I think, again, we're very focused on the asset, the financialization aspect. However, we're still building tools for those that are building games, that are building social, et cetera. But I think the large amount of where this industry is going to focus and be going in the short term, at least, is again the financialization piece.
Yeah, I agree. Is there anything like growing the company and building new tools? What are you like focused on?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say there's two main categories of people we're focused on. So if Wormhole does a good job with a developer, you actually don't know you're using Wormhole, which is a weird thing to happen. But like we want, I would say, if I were to simplify my answer, we have on the developer side, we want more teams to build multi-chain applications, in short. But I think there's this category that we're really starting to prioritize more, and we're a perfect fit for, which is what I would call asset issuers. So asset issuers, I don't know if you're familiar, is like Securitize. So we just launched a big integration with Securitize. They work with fund managers like BlackRock, KKR, Hamilton Lane to bring assets on chain. But those individuals, they want those assets, or those companies, they want those assets to be multi-chain. And so we kind of are laying this. We have the core infrastructure, but we've built kind of this out-of-the-box product almost for taking, I would say, more systemically important or large assets multi-chain. Make sure it's very safe, make sure they have compliance, make sure they have rate limiting, all these different features that an enterprise company would probably want when it comes to like lots of money being on chain.
Yeah, there's a lot of optimism towards next year. Some people say that it's going to be the 21 all over again. Well, with a bit of a spin. Obviously, I imagine this stake is based also on the elections. Do you have any thoughts here?
I always get worried about consensus on where the market's going because it tells me it's priced in and won't go there. Like, so I feel like there's a big, and look, I'm going to preface with, and I will preface for everyone that no one really knows, of course, like we make estimations, and I think that's why it's talked about so much, is because you can have an opinion, and it's hard for people to say, no, you're wrong.
I do think some people have more of a bird's eye on things, and they have more information.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
But go on.
Yeah. No, I do agree. I think what are your information inputs? Some people have access to more information. And yeah, so I absolutely I agree with what you're saying. But look, I think, like I said, I get a little nervous when I feel like it's already priced in when we're moving in that direction. I can only imagine, I can only see things hopefully going up. I think it really does depend on the election. To me, though, a lot of people think if the US election goes one way, aka the Trump way, things are going to go up. I actually think a lot of people just have hesitancy or are on the sideline, like large capital allocators, because they don't know what will happen. And then once something happens, whoever gets elected, I think even if it's, let's say, Kamala, there'll be at least an understanding maybe of like what the regime is, how to approach the market.
Positive,
yes. Yeah. I would say I can't tell you if one is more positive than the other, but I think it's more just a resistance to the unknown. Like, what will it be? Let's just wait. I can think about my own personal life, like making a move, or if I were to purchase like an apartment or something like that, I'm like, well, I'll just wait till after the election. Maybe, if I were to buy something in the US, I don't want to come back to the US because it could be not regulatory friendly. So I oftentimes apply like your individual experience and zoom out, and other people, may be thinking the same way, right? That hesitancy of the unknown.
Yeah.
What's your thought?
Well, I think that if Kamala wins, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be same, more or less. I don't think prices will go up like crazy or anything like that. I think it's gonna be good. Yeah. And if Trump wins, everything blows up.
And the blow up good way or the blow up bad way?
Blow up good way for our industry. Yeah. I know that the argument would be that Trump talks a lot and doesn't deliver. And honestly, like I'm not even voting. I'm not from here. I think it's obvious. And from like watching how he's obviously like very passionate about like getting back on his seat, and he will do.
That's one way to put it. Yeah. That's one way to put it.
And look, I think if you look like worldwide, like the impact of the US election, it sort of like impacts other countries and people's mentality all over the world. Because obviously it's such a powerhouse.
Yeah.
And then it affects like the economy, like BlackRock and everything. So it is an interesting thing to pay attention to. And I think some other countries might take some notes as this plays out as well. I don't know much, but that is my take on it.
That's fair. So I think in summary, 2025 will likely be positive for the markets.
Yeah, I think so.
Positive. I think that's a fair take.
Yeah, it's what I've been hearing from guests as well. Everyone has an opinion on how the elections might play out, which is different, like what might actually happen. But yeah, so tell me, is there anything exciting coming up for Wormhole?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of technical developer tool stuff that I won't get into, but we're getting into the what I would call intense game in a big way. So, being able to effectively move things cross-chain or move actions cross-chain much faster, I guess you can say. I'll just keep it at that high level. The other thing is quite simple. It's not necessarily something new, but we're starting to see a lot of traction. Wormhole is being chosen by institutions and stablecoin issuers to go cross-chain. We just yesterday announced with Agora, which is a new stablecoin, AUSD. They're choosing us to go cross-chain, solve the kind of legacy USDC liquidity fragmentation problem. With our partnership with Securitize and all the fund managers that are using them going multi-chain. We're working with Lido. We've got multiple stablecoins coming out for the rest of this month. So we're seeing this really interesting product market fit around this like institutions wanting to go multi-chain.
Yeah.
And so that's the main thing I would say is what we're focused on, is making sure we're delivering for those customers.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
For everyone watching, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter. It's just my full name, Robinson Berkey. Robinson like the last name, but it is my first name. And then Wormhole. Wormhole.com, Wormhole on Twitter. Just look up Wormhole and you'll find it.
Robinson, thank you.
Hey, what's up?
But it's not something Genzio is afraid of.
If you want to survive, you got to build a
How
hive.
many you know who do not understand that we do not want? Ladies and gentlemen.
Get back at the Genzio Media House.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us today.